So in this lesson, we're going to learn how to use intent extras to pass information back and forth between activities. And we'll also learn how to have some callbacks about getting information from another activity. How I want to start though on this one is just to do what we did last time for the info activity. So you probably noticed that I already gave you a second activity in here that's called an input activity. And this is the one that is going to, it's going to have a neat little color chooser and all that kind of stuff. So really what we want is our first activity to have a color and a message, but then it to be editable within the second one. Now that's something that we might normally do using a dialogue, but I just want to play around to see how that would work with an activity. So let's see how to get there first of all. So first thing is, just like we did to launch the info intent, I could do the same thing for this input activity. So I'm going to make one called an input intent, and that's going to be a new intent, context, and then the class that I want to launch. So it's the input activity class, and then we'll do the same thing, right? So we'll start off by just calling start activity with that input intent. If I run the program, I should be able to navigate now between the two activities. All right, so I've got it running. Let's check it out here. So if I click on this little pencil, which is the change color one, so I click on this guy, then we will see that launches the second activity. And it's gray and it has hello world in here, which is not necessarily what we were thinking. We were kind of hoping that it'd give us the current one, that it would populate at least correctly. But the input activity, that's what we got here, right? So we just have a message and a background color as we saw. Right. So how do we send information through there? Right. So we're going to use these things called extras. Extras are just key value pairs. So if we declare a key, and then we can send a value, right? So in our case, what we have that we're going to be sending are two things actually. So a couple of extras here. So our keys, we're going to have an extra for the message that we're going to send, and then one for the color, right? And then after we make the intent, but before we start the activity with it, we're going to put these extras into the intent, and then we'll get them out on the other side. So putting that into practice. So I am here going back to my main activity, and I'm going to make a couple of constants. All right, so I'm actually going to make these public so they can be accessible within both. I could just give it package access if I wanted to as well. So they're constants. So static, final, and the keys are just strings. And I can call this guy extra message. And I'm really lazy as far as the actual values of them. As long as they're unique, we're okay. But I usually just use the same name as my constant. And the same thing for the color. So extra color, I could call it background color. All right, so let's use these keys now. Message and color. So I'm jumping down to here. So I have this input intent, and I'm going to put an extra there, and you can see that there's a whole bunch of different types that I could put into this. Let's see, so what am I putting in? So I'm putting in a message that's going to be a string. So the first one is the key, which is going to be there. And then the message itself is, I have a field for this, all right, that has the current message. And I'll do the same thing for the color. So put extra, and this guy is going to be extra color, and that's going to be the background color, which is an integer. And it's overloaded, so it'll just take the right ones. Okay. All right, now when we launch this new activity, it's going to come with some added information. So let's go over into the receiving side. So it's the input, it's the input activity that's being launched. So we go over here and into the onCreate. And you see we hard coded these, but let's get the information out of the intent. So what I'll do is I'll say intent, and I can call this whatever I want. And I'm going to call every activity has a get intent. And if this actually has some information because it's been launched from another activity, we can use it. So let's do this. So instead of hello world, I can say, hey intent, go ahead and will you get an extra for me? And it knows that it's saving it into a string. There's actually, just like there were a lot of different put extra methods, these right here are going to be, they actually have the type in the name, so get string extra, for instance. And then we need to give it the key, right? So the key was declared over in MainActivity, and I could say that it was the extra message. All right, so like that. How about the background color, right? So gray is a fine default color, but if they send something, I want to use it. So intent.get, remember this is an integer, so I'll do get int extra, and you notice that we pass in the key, and for everything except for a string here, it's gonna ask for a default value, right? Just in case it can't get it. So MainActivity dot extra color, and I'm going to use that color dot gray as a backup, right? So that'll be our default color. Let's try it out. Okay, so it launched up here on my phone, and let's see. So this is your phone, please rescue me. So go ahead into the input one, and I'm expecting that same message to show up here. And you notice I also got the same color that I had in the other one, which was the green. Okay, so I have one-way communication from the calling activity to the receiving activity. All right, that's great, but how do we get two-way communication? And that's what's going on next here. So let me get the slides caught up. So we see just what we had done here, which was on the receiving, the input activity. We had gone ahead and we had called get intent, and then got the extras out of that, and then just use them to set my fields. Right? So no big deal. Okay, so passing data back is a little bit more complex, right? And you see that when we start it, we're actually going to let it know that we're expecting a result. So we're actually going to start activity for results, a little bit different method here. And then this input activity where it's going to do its stuff, and when it's all done, it's going to finish. And when it finishes, it's actually going to call a callback method within the first activity called onActivityResult. Right, and it will pass back some information. So this value is itself going to be another intent. So let's walk through the different steps here. So the first thing is that to do start activity for result, use it just like you did before. So start activity with the intent, but we also have a second parameter here that's like a request parameter. And this guy is just an integer constant. And the reason that we need this is you can imagine that we could have one app that calls one activity calls a whole bunch of different activities, and they when one finishes, we need to know which one finished, so we know what kind of information to be extracting. All right, so let's go ahead and do this. So here I am back in my main activity. I'm just going to change this here, start activity, change it to start activity for result, okay, and input intent. And I'm going to make this constant here. So we could say, for instance, so this is a request code, so maybe I call it request code input, right? Because it's the input activity. All right. Let's make that constant. So let's see, if I hit Alt-Enter here, it'll ask me if I want to create a constant field up top. It doesn't know what type it should be, so let's see. That's kind of weird that put that there. Let's go up here, so that's int. And you can give it any value you want. Don't use 0. There's some issue I remember once with 0 not working very well. So any positive unique constant should be fine. All right, so that is going to launch it. While we're thinking about it here, whenever I start an activity for result, I'm gonna stub in the callback here. So on activity result, that's going to come back and it's going to give me a request code. So I could even put in here, getting rid of this guy, I could say, if the request code that's come back double equals the one that I launched it with, right? Then go ahead and extract information, right? And we'll leave that there for now. It's going to be a little bit more complicated than this, but not much actually. All right, so going into the other side, back to the input activity. All right, so I launched this guy, I passed it some information, and now I want to know, well, how's it going to finish? Well, let's go up here. So I launch it, and I want to be able to change my information here. All right, so again, I might delete some things, change it however I like, and then I'm going to launch this color chooser, and I'm assuming that that's kind of like the last thing that I want to do. So if I choose a color, when I click the OK button on the dialog is when I want it to finish this activity and go back to the first one, right? So that's sort of the flag, and right now it's not working. So it just, it changes the color on this local one, but it doesn't finish this activity. So let's make that happen. So back over here in my color chooser dialog, so here's my positive button, and I already put in a to do here. So we're going to use an intent to send the information back, right? So the information that I want to send back is a color and a message, right? And I've already extracted these already. So the background color is the selected color within this dialog. So this is this color picker click listener. So this is all part of this this third-party library that I used here. That's pretty sweet, but very similar to use than as other widgets. So I send information back in an intent with extras. No surprise. Same way I got the information here. So I can call this guy intent if I want. I could call it. Sometimes I use return intent, but I'm just going to go ahead and make an intent like so. And then intent, and I want to put some extras, and really similar. You've seen this before. Now I could have different keys for these, but I'm passing back the same kind of information, color and message. So I'm going to reuse the keys from MainActivity. So I'm going to put in that message, and I'll just pass in the input activities, my message, and then I'm going to do the same thing here. So whoops. So intent. Put extra, and once again I have a key for that, and then this is going to be so it isn't a field. Well, actually it is. I could use selected color, or I just set it up to the current background color. So honestly, those have the same value. Shouldn't matter which one I use. Like so. All right, so we want to do one more thing here, and that's I want to let the intent know that this was normal, this was expected, it was a good result. So there's a set result here that will let you pass in a result code. Okay, so this result code is part of the activity class. So activity dot, and if I see I have result OK, and there's some other ones. So if I canceled it or whatever, usually I use OK here. And then the second parameter on this is the intent, right? So that's holding the data, which is just what I called intent here. And with the extras set and the result set here is okay, then this activity is ready to finish. So input activity, I want you to finish. Now when that finishes, it should launch the, excuse me, when that finishes, when that finishes, it should go back to my main activity, and here I have my request code. So it's gonna call back into the onActivity result. Okay? So I need to receive it, right? So how am I going to receive it? Well, first of all, I should probably check that the result code was okay. Again, this is the one that I set, so I have full expectation that in the normal scheme of things, that the result code here is going to be equal to activity dot result okay. All right. So if it is okay, and it was the one that I launched here, that I know that my data, this intent that was passed back, should have a message and a color in it. So I'm going to extract these guys out, use them, and then we'll be done. So doing this. So I already have an intent. So let's see. Let's take my message and let's extract it out of this intent. Remember how to do this? Well, it's staring us in the face right here, but remember we're getting the extras now. So I'm going to get a string extra, and the same key that it was put in. So extra message, and then my background color for this one is going to be from the data. I'm going to get the int extra, and again I need a key here, and I need a default. I could use gray if I wanted to, Seems to work out okay. And then I probably want to update the UI here. Okay. So call it like so, and run it. All right, got it running. So click OK here, and it gives me this guy. I'm going to change the message. Why don't I say something like, I'll change it from please rescue me to please help. And then change the color to, I don't know, maybe this pinkish color here, and then click OK. Remember, it's when I click OK that I want it to finish this activity. And you see, so that the input activity did finish, and we're back in our original main activity, like so. All right, we have pink and please help. Now, since these guys are stored in fields, if I were to launch the input activity again, that should default to that pink and that message right there. If I were to be in the process of maybe selecting something here, say I select blue, but then I cancel it, and maybe even I change these words here, so please help me. But then what I'm going to do is rather than going through the color chooser and clicking OK, which is the normal way to go back, if I were to click the back button right here, then you see it didn't update the text. And again, that's because the result code was not okay. All right. So sounds good. So I'm going to get the slides caught up here. So this is, again, how we get information back, as I talked about. I guess I went by this guy real quick here. So this was the whole thing when I started it for result. I guess we saw that. So yeah, so in the input activity, when we're done, I'm going to put the extras back into a new intent, set the result is okay, and then finish. When I come back to my onActivity result, this is a little bit different framework that I've used in some other apps. So say I had a bunch of different ones, again, maybe a switch statement. I kept it really simple when I coded it up, just with a single if, but you could have different cases for different requests that you might have, and within each one of them see whether it's okay or not. In this example, I just sort of logged some different things here. No need to do this in what we have here. And then finally, I wanted to use the information. So again, I basically just called the get methods on this data intent that was returned, and I set them into fields and updated my UI to display them. Okay, and that's about it. And I showed you with the back button that didn't work. So it wasn't okay, it was canceled. So kind of to summarize what we have so far is that we're using intents to launch activities, and we're using extras to send information. And we saw two examples of using extras. One was passing it when we launched the activity, and the other was we were using extras on an intent to pass back results here. Right? And while we only looked at a string and an int as examples, there are many different types that you can have, right? So basically any kind of primitive type works out fine. Strings, as we saw. You can use any object you want as long as it can be flattened into what's called a parcel, kind of like being serializable or whatever. And we'll talk more about these later in this unit. And you can also have arrays of any of those types, and array lists of a couple types as well. So pretty good stuff. That's all we have for you. We'll see you next time.